Marcus Chun pushed his cleaning cart down the sterile hallway of the Terran Galactic Research Institute, the wheels squeaking slightly on the polished floor. At 42, he had the weathered hands of someone who had spent years scrubbing, mopping, and maintaining spaces others took for granted. His daughter Emma's school photo peeked out from his shirt pocket, a constant reminder of why he worked double shifts at the most prestigious xenobiological research facility on Earth. The facility hummed with activity during the day, scientists bustling between labs, analyzing samples from dozens of alien worlds, and conducting experiments that would have been pure fantasy just 50 years ago. But now, at 11 p.m., Marcus was alone with the silence and the gentle hum of life support systems. He preferred the night shift. The pay differential helped with Emma's medical bills, and the quietude gave him time to think without the constant chatter of researchers treating him like part of the furniture. Marcus had been working at the Institute for 3 years, ever since his wife Sarah died in the hovercar accident that also left 8-year-old Emma with chronic lung damage from the smoke inhalation. The medical treatments were experimental, but promising, requiring a steady income and insurance that his previous job at the neighborhood cleaning service couldn't provide. The Institute paid well, had excellent benefits, and asked few questions about his background. He stopped at Laboratory 7, swiping his access card. The door hissed open, revealing the familiar sterile environment of gleaming surfaces and humming equipment. But something was different tonight. The main containment chamber, usually empty or housing plant samples, contained something that made Marcus drop his spray bottle. Inside the transparent, aluminum enclosure sat what could only be described as an alien. It was roughly humanoid, but clearly not human, standing about 7 feet tall with elongated limbs and skin that seemed to shimmer between blue and silver. Its face was angular with large, dark eyes that held an unmistakable intelligence. Most remarkably, those eyes were focused directly on Marcus with what appeared to be recognition and relief. Marcus looked around the lab, expecting to see researchers or security personnel, but the space was empty except for him and the being. According to his work schedule, Laboratory 7 was supposed to be vacant for deep cleaning tonight. A tablet on the nearby desk displayed a message in the clinical font the researchers favored. Emergency evacuation due to containment breach in Laboratory 12. All personnel evacuated. Facility lockdown initiated. Estimated resolution time, 6 to 8 hours. The alien pressed its hand against the transparent barrier and spoke, its voice somehow reaching Marcus despite the containment field. "You are not like the others who study me," it said in accented but clear English. "You clean their mess, maintain their spaces. You understand what it means to care for things others ignore." Marcus set down his cleaning supplies, his heart racing. In 3 years at the Institute, he had never directly encountered any of the alien specimens. They were research subjects, kept in specialized labs he wasn't cleared to enter. Yet here he was apparently locked in with one due to some kind of emergency evacuation. "I shouldn't be talking to you," Marcus said, glancing toward the door. "I'm just here to clean." "Yet you remain," the alien observed. "The others fled when the emergency began. They sealed me here, as they always do when their carefully controlled environment is threatened. But you stayed." Marcus walked closer to the containment chamber, studying the being inside. Despite its alien appearance, there was something undeniably familiar about its posture and expression. Are you okay in there? Do you need anything?" The alien's large eyes widened slightly. "In 3 cycles of this world's rotation around its star, you're the first to ask about my welfare rather than my capabilities or the composition of my cellular structure." It moved closer to the barrier, and Marcus could see that its skin wasn't just shimmering, it was actually changing color slightly in response to its emotions. "I'm called HFY in my language. In yours, it would translate roughly to Farwalker or perhaps Distance Crosser." "Marcus," he replied automatically, then immediately wondered if he should have given his real name. "Marcus Chun. Well, you're right. I'm the janitor." "Marcus Chun," HFY repeated, seeming to taste the syllables. "Tell me, Marcus Chun who cleans what others soil, do you have offspring?" The question caught Marcus off guard. "A daughter, Emma. She's 11. He found himself pulling out her photo before he realized what he was doing. "Why do you ask?" HFY's skin shifted to a warmer shade of blue. "Because I can see it in how you move, how you speak. There's a careful precision in your actions, a protective instinct that comes only from being responsible for young life. I too have offspring, though they are very far away now. Marcus stared at the alien, at HFY, with new understanding. You're a parent. Was. AM. The distinction becomes unclear when one is taken from their world and held for study. HFY's skin darkened. My young ones are with their birth cluster on Kepler 442b. I was traveling between star systems when your species intercepted my vessel. That was 8 of your months ago. The casual revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. This wasn't just a research subject or a specimen. This was a person, a father, who had been separated from his children for 8 months. They just took you from space. Your species calls it first contact protocol, HFY explained, his skin now a deep indigo that Marcus was beginning to recognize as sadness or resignation. When they encountered my ship, they determined I represented a potential threat or invaluable resource. Both assessments led to the same result, my capture and detention for study. Marcus looked around the laboratory at the monitoring equipment, the sampling devices, the detailed charts tracking everything from HFY's sleep cycles to his biochemical responses to various stimuli. For the first time, the clinical efficiency of the place felt sinister rather than impressive. How long are they planning to keep you here? Marcus asked. I believe the phrase they use is indefinitely for the good of both our species. HFY moved to a small alcove in the containment chamber where Marcus could see a sleeping mat and basic sanitation facilities. They provide adequate nutrition and monitor my health carefully. I am, as they frequently note, an invaluable research opportunity. The alien's matter-of-fact tone made the situation even more disturbing. Marcus thought about Emma, about what it would mean to be separated from her for 8 months with no end in sight. The idea was unbearable. Have you tried to communicate with them? To explain about your children? Many times in the early periods, Dr. Harrison, the lead researcher, assured me that my situation was being handled with appropriate consideration for all parties involved. HFY's skin shifted to what Marcus was learning to interpret as bitter amusement. I have since observed that this phrase means we will continue as planned regardless of your concerns. Marcus knew Dr. Harrison, a brilliant woman by all accounts, but someone who saw everything through the lens of research value and scientific advancement. He'd overheard her conversations in the hallways, discussions about breakthrough discoveries, and the potential for revolutionary advances in xenobiology. He'd never heard her mention that her primary subject had a family. What about your people? Won't they come looking for you? Perhaps. My species does not wage war as yours does, but we do seek our missing. HFY settled onto his sleeping mat, his long limbs folding in a way that reminded Marcus of a cat. However, I was traveling alone, and the route I was taking was not a common one. It may be some time before I'm missed enough for a search to begin. Marcus sat down on a lab stool, processing everything he'd learned. The emergency evacuation had left him alone with someone who was essentially a prisoner, someone who had been separated from his children for 8 months while human scientists studied him like a laboratory animal. Someone who, despite being an alien from another star system, was fundamentally just another father trying to get home to his kids. The emergency tonight, Marcus said. What do you know about it? HFY's skin brightened slightly. There was an accident in Laboratory 12. One of your researchers was attempting to synthesize a compound based on my cellular structure. The process became unstable, releasing what your people call a biological hazard. The facility's automated systems initiated a lockdown to prevent contamination from spreading. And they just left you here. Standard protocol dictates that all non-essential areas be sealed during such emergencies. I am, apparently, non-essential. HFY's skin had returned to the deeper blue of sadness. This has happened twice before during my time here. Each time, I'm sealed in while the humans evacuate to safety. Marcus felt a growing anger at the casual dehumanization, or perhaps dealienization, of HFY's treatment. That's not right. Your species has a concept called acceptable losses, do you not? In emergencies, some things are preserved and others are sacrificed for the greater good. HFY looked directly at Marcus. I am, in your military parlance, expendable. The blunt assessment hung in the air between them. Marcus thought about his own life, about how often he felt invisible to the researchers and administrators at the Institute. But at least he could leave at the end of his shift, go home to Emma, make choices about his life. HFY had been denied even those basic freedoms. What would happen if you got out of there? Marcus asked, nodding toward the containment chamber. HFY tilted his head. studying Marcus with new interest. I would seek to return to my offspring, naturally. But escape is not possible. The containment field is designed to prevent exactly that. Even if I could somehow breach it, the facility is surrounded by your security forces, and beyond that, I am on a world not my own, without resources or allies. Marcus stood and walked closer to the containment chamber, studying the control panel beside it. His work at the Institute had given him access to most areas of the facility, and he'd picked up more about the various systems than the researchers probably realized. Janitors, after all, saw everything and were trusted with nothing important enough to warrant careful supervision. The emergency lockdown, Marcus said slowly. How long did the message say it would last? 6 to 8 hours was the estimate. Marcus checked his watch. It was now past midnight. If the lockdown had begun around 10 p.m., that gave him potentially 6 hours alone with HFY before the facility returned to normal operations. 6 hours during which no one would be monitoring the containment chamber in Laboratory 7, because everyone assumed the lab was empty. HFY, Marcus said carefully, if I could get you out of there, what would you do? The alien skin shifted through several colors in rapid succession. Surprise, hope, caution, and something that might have been excitement. Are you suggesting what I believe you are suggesting? Marcus Chun, who cleans what others soil. Marcus thought about Emma, about the phone call he'd received just that morning from her doctor about a new treatment that their insurance wouldn't cover. He thought about the bonus he'd been promised for working the emergency shift tonight, money that would go toward keeping his daughter healthy. He thought about his job, his benefits, the security that this position provided for a small family. Then, he thought about being separated from Emma for 8 months with no hope of return. I'm asking a hypothetical question, Marcus said. If you could get out, what would you do? HFY was quiet for a long moment, his skin cycling through contemplative shades of blue and silver. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that Marcus recognized, the voice of a parent discussing their children's welfare. I would seek to contact my people to let them know where I am and that I am alive. I would attempt to negotiate for my release or, failing that, for some means of communication with my offspring. I would not seek to harm your people or your world, as much as I might resent my treatment here. Violence would only make my situation worse and would not reunite me with my young ones. Marcus nodded slowly. The answer felt honest, practical, and, most importantly, focused on family rather than revenge. It was exactly what he would have said in the same situation. The containment field, Marcus said, moving to examine the control panel. It's not actually locked right now, is it? During an emergency evacuation, the system defaults to maintaining current settings rather than implementing security lockdown. HFY moved closer to the barrier, his skin brightening with something that looked like hope. You know the systems here well, for someone who merely cleans. You learn things when people ignore you, Marcus replied, running his fingers over the control interface. The researchers assume I can't understand their equipment, so they don't bother securing it when I'm around. 3 years of maintaining these labs teaches you more than they think. He found the emergency override panel, protected by a simple access card reader. Marcus pulled out his badge, the one that gave him cleaning access to every lab in the facility. During emergency evacuation, the system prioritized safety over security. If someone with legitimate access needed to enter a lab for safety reasons, the barriers should yield. Marcus swiped his card. The containment field shimmered and dissolved. For a moment, both Marcus and HFY stood perfectly still, as if neither quite believed what had just happened. Then, HFY stepped forward, moving with fluid grace out of the containment chamber for the first time in 8 months. Marcus Chun, HFY said, his skin now glowing with warm golden hues. You have given me something I had forgotten existed, choice. Marcus looked at the alien standing free in a laboratory and realized he had just crossed a line from which there was no return. He had aided in the escape of what the government would certainly classify as an extremely valuable extraterrestrial prisoner. His job was gone, his benefits were gone, and quite possibly his freedom was gone too. But as he looked at HFY's expression of profound gratitude and hope, Marcus found that he didn't regret his decision. Some things were more important than security. Now what? Marcus asked. HFY moved to the laboratory's communication console, his long fingers dancing over the interface with surprising familiarity. Now we attempt to contact my people. And you, Marcus Chun, must decide whether you wish to be merely the janitor who opened a door or something much more significant. As Zephi began working at the console, his skin glowing with concentration, Marcus realized that his quiet night shift had just become the most important hours of his life. Outside, the emergency lockdown continued, giving them precious time. But time for what? Exactly, he was only beginning to understand. The alien's fingers moved with increasing confidence over the human-designed interface, adapting to the technology with remarkable speed. After several minutes of work, Zephi looked up at Marcus with an expression of triumph. "The communication array," he said, "I can modify it to send a message beyond your solar system. My people monitor certain frequencies, watching for signals from lost travelers. If I can reach them, what happens then?" Marcus asked. Zephi's skin shifted to a deeper blue, thoughtful and serious. "Then, we discover whether your species is ready for true first contact," Marcus chunned. "Not the taking of prisoners for study, but actual communication between civilizations." Marcus looked around the laboratory at the monitoring equipment and research apparatus that had defined Zephi's existence for 8 months, and realized that everything was about to change. For all of them. The communication console hummed with unusual harmonics as Zephi continued his modifications, his elongated fingers moving with the precision of someone intimately familiar with quantum communication principles. Marcus watched in fascination as the alien rewired human technology using knowledge from civilization that had mastered interstellar travel when humanity was still figuring out agriculture. "Your people's equipment is remarkably adaptable," Zephi observed, his skin cycling through shades of blue that Marcus was learning indicated focus concentration. "Primitive by our standards, but ingeniously designed. There's something to be said for the way humans approach problems through brute force rather than elegant efficiency." Marcus wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an insult. "Will it work? Can you actually reach your people from here?" "The principles are sound. Your quantum entanglement communication system, while limited in range, can be modified to piggyback on naturally occurring quantum foam fluctuations. It is like," Zephi paused, searching for the right analogy, "like using a small stone to create ripples that reach across an entire lake." As he spoke, Marcus noticed something he hadn't observed while Zephi was contained. The alien moved with the careful precision of someone accustomed to working in low-gravity or weightless environments. But he also showed signs of physical stress. There was a slight tremor in his hands, and his breathing seemed more labored than it should be. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked. "You seem—" "I'm slowly dying," Zephi said matter-of-factly, not looking up from his work. "Your world's atmosphere, while adequate for short-term survival, lacks certain trace elements my physiology requires. The researchers have been aware of this for approximately 4 of your months, but their studies take priority over my long-term health." The casual delivery of this information hit Marcus like a physical blow. "They know you're dying, and they're not doing anything about it. Dr. Harrison assured me they are exploring options for addressing my physiological needs. However, these explorations appear to be secondary to their research into my cellular regeneration capabilities and the potential military applications of my species' technology." Zephi's skin shifted to the dark indigo Marcus had learned indicated deep sadness or resignation. "I estimate I have perhaps 2 of your months remaining before the degradation becomes irreversible." Marcus stared at the alien in horror. Not only had human scientists kidnapped a father from his children, they were essentially allowing him to die slowly while they studied him. The clinical detachment of it was monstrous. "That's murder," Marcus said quietly. "Your laws may not define it as such, since I am not technically human," Zephi replied. "But, yes, the end result is the same." The revelation added urgency to their situation that went far beyond Marcus's initial impulse to help a fellow parent. This wasn't just about reunion, it was about survival. "What do you need?" Marcus asked. "What trace elements?" Zephi finally looked up from the console, his large dark eyes studying Marcus with what might have been surprise. "You would help me even knowing the consequences to yourself? You're dying." "Of course I'd help." For a moment, Zephi's skin shifted through a rapid spectrum of colors that seemed to indicate profound emotion. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight of gratitude that transcended species barriers. "The elements I require exist on your world, but in concentrations too low to extract easily. However, they can be found in higher concentrations in certain meteorite fragments stored in your facility's geology department. Specifically, fragments from the Allende meteorite containing calcium-aluminum inclusions." Marcus knew exactly what HFY was talking about. The geology department stored samples from hundreds of meteorite falls, and the Allende meteorite was one of their prize specimens. More importantly, Marcus had access to those storage areas as part of his cleaning duties. "I can get those," Marcus said, "but how do we process them? I'm a janitor, not a xenobiologist." "The process is simple once the materials are obtained. Your species has equipment in the chemical synthesis laboratories that can be adapted for the purpose." HFY returned to his work on the communication array. "But first we must contact my people. If they know I am alive and where I am located, they will come. And when they arrive, your species will face a choice about how to conduct true first contact." Marcus understood the implications. When HFY's people arrived looking for their lost traveler, humanity would have to explain why they had captured and detained him instead of attempting communication. The revelation would force a reckoning with how humans had handled their first encounter with intelligent alien life. "How will your people react when they find out what happened to you?" Marcus asked. HFY was quiet for a moment, his work on the console pausing. "My species is not warlike as yours is, but we have strong concepts of justice and family obligation. The taking of a parent from their offspring, the slow killing through neglect, these are crimes that demand response." "What kind of response?" "That will depend largely on whether I survive to advocate for restraint and whether your people show wisdom in how they handle the situation when my family comes to retrieve me." HFY's skin shifted to a pattern Marcus hadn't seen before, bands of silver and gold that seemed to indicate complex emotions. "I do not wish war between our peoples, Marcus Chun, but I also will not allow my children to grow up believing their parent abandoned them or that such treatment of travelers is acceptable." The weight of responsibility was staggering. Marcus realized that his decision to help HFY escape might be the fulcrum point that determined whether humanity's first contact with an alien civilization ended in peaceful coexistence or interstellar conflict. "There," HFY announced, stepping back from the modified console. "The array is ready, but transmission will require significant power, more than this laboratory can provide without drawing attention." Marcus thought about the facility's layout and power distribution. The main reactor chamber in sublevel 3. During emergency lockdown, it's operating on automated systems with minimal monitoring. We could route power from there. Excellent. But such a power draw will be noticed when the facility returns to normal operations. We will have perhaps an hour after transmission before your security forces locate the source. An hour to contact an alien civilization, explain 8 months of imprisonment, and somehow set the stage for peaceful first contact. No pressure at all. Marcus led HFY through the darkened corridors of the Institute, navigating by memory and the dim glow of emergency lighting. The alien moved with surprising stealth for someone 7 feet tall, his footsteps making barely a whisper of sound on the polished floors. "Your facility is larger than I realized," HFY observed as they descended toward the reactor level. "How many researchers work here?" "About 300 during the day shift, maybe 50 on the night shift, though most of them were evacuated." Marcus paused at a security checkpoint, swiping his access card. "Dr. Harrison runs the whole xenobiology department. She's been here for 15 years, published more papers on alien life than anyone else on Earth. Yet she has studied only me," HFY pointed out. "Her expertise is based on a sample size of one individual from one species. It would be like me claiming to understand all of humanity after observing only you." The observation was uncomfortably accurate. Marcus had always been impressed by Dr. Harrison's reputation and credentials, but he never considered how limited her actual experience with alien life truly was. They reached sub-level 3, and Marcus led HFY into the reactor chamber. The massive fusion reactor hummed with contained power, its control systems displaying readouts that would have been incomprehensible to Marcus a week ago. But 3 years of cleaning around this equipment had taught him the basics of power distribution and emergency protocols. "The system should accept a routing command if I use the emergency maintenance override," Marcus explained, moving to a control panel. "But I've never actually tried to reroute power on this scale." "I can assist," HFY said, studying the reactor's design with obvious admiration. "Fusion technology. Your species achieved this remarkably quickly after discovering nuclear principles. Most civilizations take several additional centuries to make the transition from fission to controlled fusion. How long did your people take? We never used nuclear fission for power generation. Our development path was quite different. HFY began making adjustments to the power routing controls with the confidence of someone who understood the underlying principles. We mastered gravitational manipulation before we split our first atom. It shapes one's perspective on energy generation. Marcus watched as HFY worked, marveling at how the alien adapted human technology to his needs. It was like watching a master musician play an unfamiliar instrument. The principles were universal enough that skill translated across vast differences in design and culture. There, HFY announced, power is now being routed to Laboratory 7 at levels sufficient for interstellar transmission. We have perhaps 45 minutes before the power drain becomes impossible to ignore. They made their way back through the facility, moving more quickly now that time was critical. Marcus found himself thinking about Emma, wondering what she would think of his decision to help an alien father reunite with his children. She'd always been proud of his work at the Institute, even if she didn't fully understand what the researchers were studying there. Back in Laboratory 7, HFY took position at the Modified Communication Array. His skin began shifting through complex patterns of color as he prepared for transmission, what Marcus was beginning to recognize as intense emotional preparation. What will you tell them? Marcus asked. The truth. That I am alive, where I am located, and that I have encountered both the worst and best of humanity. HFY looked at Marcus meaningfully. That while some of your people captured and studied me like a specimen, one human chose to risk everything to restore my freedom. Marcus felt the weight of representing his entire species in HFY's message. What if they don't believe you about me? What if they think all humans are like the researchers? That is why you must remain here when they arrive, HFY said. You must speak for your people, explain that there are humans who value justice and family, who can be trusted to treat other species with dignity. The implications of that request sank in. Marcus would have to stay and face whatever consequences came from his actions, serving as humanity's representative in what might be the most important diplomatic contact in history. I have a daughter, Marcus said quietly. If something happens to me, nothing will happen to you. If I have any influence over the situation, HFY promised, his skin shifting to patterns of gold and white that seemed to indicate solemn commitment. You have given me hope of seeing my children again. I will ensure you retain the same opportunity with yours. HFY activated the transmission system. The modified array came to life with a deep harmonic resonance that seemed to vibrate through the floor and walls of the laboratory. Energy readings on the control panel spiked as the message began its journey across the vast distances between stars. For several minutes, HFY spoke in his native language, a series of melodic tones and harmonic combinations that sounded almost like singing. Marcus couldn't understand the words, but he could hear the emotion in them. Joy at the possibility of contact, pain at months of separation, love for his distant children, and hope for the future. When the transmission ended, HFY slumped against the console, his skin cycling through exhausted patterns of pale blue and silver. It is done, he said. The message will reach the monitoring stations in approximately 36 of your hours. My family will know I am alive and where to find me. Marcus checked his watch. It was nearly 3 a.m. The power draw from their transmission will be noticed when the day's shift returned, giving them perhaps 5 or 6 hours before the facility erupted in activity. Now we wait. Marcus asked. Now we prepare, HFY corrected. Your people will want answers when they discover what has happened. And my people will want assurances that I have been treated with dignity and that humans can be trusted for future contact. Marcus looked around Laboratory 7 at the monitoring equipment and research apparatus that had been HFY's prison for 8 months and realized that this room would soon become the center of the most important diplomatic negotiations in human history. I need to get those meteorite samples you mentioned, Marcus said. If you're going to survive until your people arrive, we need to address your physiological needs. HFY note Gadafuli. The geology storage is on sublevel 2, correct? I will remain here and monitor for any changes in facility status. Marcus made his way through the darkened corridors to the geology department, his mind racing with everything that had happened and everything that was yet to come. In the space of a few hours, his life had transformed from the simple routine of a night shift janitor to being a key figure in humanity's first real contact with alien intelligence. The geology storage area was filled with specimens from around the world and beyond, rocks, minerals, and meteorite fragments that represented billions of years of cosmic history. Marcus found the Allende meteorite samples in a climate-controlled case, each fragment carefully labeled and cataloged. As he gathered the specific samples HFY had requested, Marcus thought about the irony of the situation. These fragments of stone and metal from the depths of space might be the key to keeping alive the first alien visitor to Earth, someone whose survival could determine whether humanity's future among the stars will be marked by cooperation or conflict. When he returned to Laboratory 7, Marcus found HFY examining the human research notes about his own physiology, his expression unreadable. "They understand my biology better than I expected," HFY observed. "They know exactly what is happening to me and how to prevent it. Yet they chose to continue their studies rather than address my deteriorating health." Marcus set the meteorite samples on a workbench. Maybe they thought they had more time. Perhaps. Or perhaps they believed their research was more valuable than my life. HFY's skin shifted to the dark patterns Marcus associated with anger. "It matters little now. What matters is that we extract what I need from these samples and prepare for what comes next." As HFY began the process of extracting the trace elements he needed from the meteorite fragments, Marcus realized that the next few hours would determine not just the fate of one alien father trying to get home to his children, but the entire future relationship between two civilizations spanning the stars. The weight of that responsibility was terrifying, but as Marcus watched HFY work with desperate hope to save his own life, he knew he had made the right choice. Some things were more important than job security or personal safety. Family was one of them, regardless of what planet you called home. The chemical synthesis laboratory hummed with activity as HFY worked to extract the life-sustaining elements from the meteorite fragments. Marcus watched in fascination as the alien manipulated human equipment with increasing confidence, adapting laboratory instruments designed for terrestrial chemistry to serve his extraterrestrial physiology. "The process is more complex than I initially calculated," HFY explained, his skin cycling through patterns of intense concentration. "Your world's gravity affects how the trace elements separate from their matrix compounds. I must adjust the centrifugal force calculations by approximately 15%. Marcus found himself oddly proud that Earth's gravity was presenting a challenge to advanced alien science, even if it was complicating their desperate attempt to save HFY's life. "Is it working, though? Are you getting what you need?" HFY held up a small vial containing what looked like metallic dust that seemed to shift and shimmer in the laboratory lighting. "This concentrate contains approximately 60% of what my physiology requires. It will halt the deterioration and perhaps even reverse some of the damage, but for complete recovery, I would need access to materials not available on your world. How long will this buy us? If administered correctly, it should stabilize my condition for several weeks, perhaps longer." HFY carefully transferred the concentrate to a medical injector he had modified from the laboratory's equipment. "Long enough for my family to arrive and for us to attempt meaningful dialogue between our species." Marcus checked his watch, 4:17 a.m. The emergency lockdown had been in effect for over 6 hours, but morning shift change wasn't until 7 a.m. They still had time to prepare, but not much. "What exactly should I expect when your people arrive?" Marcus asked. What am I supposed to say to them? How do I explain what humans did to you?" HFY administered the injection, his skin immediately beginning to shift to healthier, more vibrant hues as the trace elements took effect. "You tell them the truth, Marcus-chan. You explain that while some humans acted from fear and treated me as a specimen to be studied, you acted from compassion and recognized me as a person to be helped. But I'm nobody special. I'm just a janitor with a sick kid. What makes you think they'll listen to me? Because you did what trained diplomats and scientists could not. You looked beyond my alien appearance and saw someone who needed help." HFY moved with noticeably more energy now, the treatment already beginning to work. "My people value actions over credentials. They will be far more impressed by what you did than by what Dr. Harrison accomplished through 8 months of study." The laboratory's communication panel suddenly activated, displaying an incoming priority message. Both Marcus and HFY froze as Dr. Harrison's voice filled the room. "Attention, all remaining facility personnel. Emergency lockdown has been partially lifted in sections A through D. All personnel are to report to their assigned stations for facility status assessment. I repeat, lockdown is being lifted. Resume normal operations protocols. Marcus felt his stomach drop. They're coming back early. The emergency must be resolved. HFY moved quickly to the communication array they had modified earlier. Can you delay their return to this laboratory? We need more time to prepare for contact. I can try. Marcus accessed the facility's maintenance system on his portable tablet, a device that had always been part of his job, but suddenly felt like the most important tool in human history. I can report a contamination leak in Laboratory 7. Request a 48-hour quarantine period for deep decontamination. Do it. Marcus entered the false maintenance report, his hands shaking slightly as he realized he was now actively deceiving the Institute's administration. The report would trigger automated protocols that would keep Laboratory 7 sealed for at least 2 days, giving them time to handle first contact without immediate interference. Done. But this just bought us time, not a permanent solution. When they eventually get in here and find you gone from containment, there'll be hell to pay. By then, my family will have arrived, HFY said with confidence that Marcus wished he shared. The situation will be different. The alien moved to a workstation and began composing what appeared to be detailed notes on a tablet. I am documenting everything that has occurred during my imprisonment here, including your intervention tonight. When my people arrive, they will have a complete record of my treatment and your assistance. Marcus watched HFY work, marveling at how quickly the alien had adapted to human writing systems and technology. How are you able to use our equipment so easily? I mean, you figured out our communication systems in a few hours. Universal principles translate across technologies, HFY explained without looking up from his documentation. Mathematics is constant, physics behaves consistently, and information theory has fundamental rules that apply regardless of the species that develops it. The specific implementations differ, but the underlying concepts remain the same. So any sufficiently advanced species could reverse engineer any other species' technology? Eventually, yes, though the definition of sufficiently advanced varies considerably. HFY's skin shifted to patterns Marcus had learned indicated gentle amusement. Your species, for example, is remarkably innovative but also remarkably specialized. You develop powerful solutions to specific problems, but sometimes miss elegant approaches that would solve multiple problems simultaneously. Marcus wasn't sure if that was a compliment or criticism of human engineering. Like what? Your communication array, for instance. You built a quantum entanglement system capable of instantaneous transmission across vast distances, but you limited its range artificially because you were thinking only in terms of planetary communication. With minor modifications, which we accomplished tonight, the same system can reach across star systems. Why didn't our scientists think of that? Because they were focused on solving Earth communication needs, not galactic ones. It never occurred to them to design for interstellar contact because they assumed they were alone. HFY finished his documentation and turned to Marcus. This is why my people will be interested in establishing contact with yours, despite the circumstances of my capture. Humans think differently than we do, approach problems from unexpected angles. There is much we could learn from each other. The idea of humanity having something to offer an interstellar civilization was both thrilling and terrifying. Marcus thought about all the ways first contact could go wrong, all the misunderstandings and conflicts that seemed inevitable when two completely different species attempted to communicate. What if we mess it up? Marcus asked. What if humans say or do the wrong thing when your people arrive? That is why you will be there to guide the conversation, HFY replied. You understand both perspectives now. You know what humans are capable of, both good and evil, and you know what my people will be looking for in terms of character and trustworthiness. Marcus felt the weight of that responsibility settling on his shoulders like a physical burden. He thought about Emma, sleeping peacefully at home with their neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez, completely unaware that her father was about to become either humanity's greatest diplomat or its most notorious traitor. I should call my daughter, Marcus said suddenly. She needs to know. If something goes wrong. Nothing will go wrong, HFY said firmly. But, yes, you should contact her. Family connections are precious, and they should not be taken for granted. Marcus stepped into an adjacent room and dialed Emma's communicator. It took several rings before Mrs. Rodriguez answered, clearly having been woken from sleep. Marcus? What's wrong? Are you okay? I'm fine, Mrs. Rodriguez. I'm sorry for calling so late. Can I talk to Emma for just a minute? She's sleeping, but I can wake her if it's important. Marcus almost said no, almost decided not to worry his daughter with a call that might be his last chance to speak with her. But then he thought about HFY, separated from his children for 8 months without even the opportunity for a final conversation. Yes, please. It's important. A few minutes later, Emma's sleepy voice came through the communicator. Dad, what's wrong? Are you hurt? I'm fine, sweetheart. I just wanted to hear your voice. I'm working a special assignment tonight, and I might not be home exactly when I planned. Is it something dangerous? Emma's voice carried the worry that chronic illness had made her too familiar with at 11 years old. It's something important, Marcus said carefully. Something that might help a lot of people, including a father who misses his kids very much. Okay, will you be careful? I'll be very careful. And Emma, I want you to know how proud I am of you, and how much I love you. No matter what happens, remember that everything I do is because I love you. I love you too, Dad. Come home safe, okay? I will. I promise. Marcus ended the call and returned to the laboratory, where he found HFY standing at the window, looking out at the pre-dawn sky. The alien skin was displaying patterns Marcus hadn't seen before, complex swirls of silver and gold that seemed almost hypnotic. You spoke with your offspring, HFY observed without turning around. Yes, it felt like the right thing to do. It was. In my culture, we believe that words of love spoken to family create bonds that transcend time and distance. They become part of the quantum fabric that connects all consciousness across the universe. Marcus joined HFY at the window. Do you really believe that? Or is it just a comforting idea? Does it matter? If the belief brings comfort and strengthens the bond between parent and child, then it serves its purpose regardless of its literal truth. HFY turned to Marcus, his skin now displaying gentle patterns of blue and silver. Your daughter will carry your words with her always, just as my children carry mine despite the vast distance between us. What did you tell them when you left for your journey? Did you know you might not come back? HFY's skin darkened slightly. I told them I was traveling to observe distant stars, and that I would return with stories of wonders beyond their imagination. It was supposed to be a short journey, perhaps 2 of your months in total duration. Do you think they know you're in trouble? My offspring are intelligent and perceptive. They know their parent would not simply disappear without word. They will be frightened, confused, perhaps angry at what appears to be abandonment. HFY's voice carried a weight of guilt that transcended species boundaries. This is one of the reasons I must survive until they arrive. They must know I did not choose to leave them. Marcus understood that guilt intimately. Every extra shift he worked, every late night at the Institute, every hour spent away from Emma to pay for her medical care carried the same weight of parental sacrifice and worry. They'll understand, Marcus said. When they're older, they'll understand that everything you did was for them. Perhaps, but understanding and forgiving are not always the same thing. The laboratory's environmental systems registered the approaching dawn through gradual adjustments to lighting and atmospheric circulation. Marcus realized they had been working through the night, and the facility would soon return to full activity despite their false contamination report. How long before your people arrive? Marcus asked. The message will reach them in approximately 30 hours. Response time will depend on their current location and the fastest available transport. If they depart immediately with a high-speed vessel, perhaps 3 to 4 of your days total. 4 days to prepare for first contact. 4 days for Marcus to figure out how to represent humanity in the most important diplomatic encounter in history. 4 days to ensure that the reunion of an alien father with his children didn't spark an interstellar war. What should I be doing to prepare? Marcus asked. Learning, HFY replied. About my people, about the potential consequences of this contact, about the questions your leaders will ask, and the answers that will promote peace rather than conflict. For the next several hours, as dawn broke over the Institute, and the facility hummed back to life around their quarantined laboratory, HFY taught Marcus about galactic civilization. He explained the vast networks of species that traded knowledge and resources across thousands of light years, the protocols for peaceful contact between civilizations, and the sad history of species that had failed to make the transition from planetary to interstellar societies. Your people stand at a critical juncture, HFY explained as he showed Marcus star charts displaying the local galactic neighborhood. You have developed the basic technologies necessary for space travel and even primitive faster-than-light communication. But you have not yet learned to think beyond the boundaries of your single world. What do you mean? You still think in terms of nations and territories, of us versus them, of finite resources that must be fought over. These concepts become meaningless when resources and living space become effectively infinite across multiple star systems. Marcus studied the star charts, trying to comprehend the scale of what HFY was describing. How many species are out there? In this galactic sector alone? Approximately 47 that have achieved interstellar capability. Perhaps 200 more that are approaching that threshold, as your species currently is. The numbers were staggering. Humanity wasn't just making contact with one alien species. They were potentially joining a community of hundreds of civilizations spanning the galaxy. Why haven't any of them contacted us before now? HFY's skin shifted to patterns that Marcus had learned indicated careful consideration of his words. There are protocols, Marcus-chun, species that develop space travel through violence and conquest, as yours has historically done, are typically quarantined until they demonstrate the ability to coexist peacefully with other civilizations. We're quarantined? You mean other species know about us but avoid us? Your species has been observed and evaluated for approximately 300 of your years. The consensus has been that while humans show remarkable innovation and adaptability, you also demonstrate concerning patterns of aggression and exploitation of other intelligent beings. Marcus felt a surge of defensive pride in humanity, followed immediately by the uncomfortable recognition that HFY's assessment wasn't entirely unfair. Human history was filled with examples of first contact between different human cultures that had ended badly for one side or the other. But you think we're ready now? I think you are capable of growth, which is more than can be said for some species we have encountered. And I think there are humans, like yourself, who demonstrate the wisdom and compassion necessary for peaceful coexistence. Marcus looked around Laboratory 7, at the research equipment that had held HFY prisoner for 8 months, and realized that the alien's faith in human potential was remarkable given what he had experienced. What happens if we fail? If humanity screws up first contact? HFY was quiet for a long moment, his skin displaying complex patterns that seemed to indicate deep sadness. Then, your species remains quarantined until you either achieve wisdom or destroy yourselves. It has happened before. The weight of that statement settled over Marcus like a heavy blanket. The next few days wouldn't just determine HFY's fate or even the immediate consequences of his escape. They would determine whether humanity earned its place among the stars or remained trapped in its home solar system until it learned to become something better than what it currently was. As the morning sun streamed through the laboratory windows, Marcus realized that his life as a simple janitor was over. Whatever happened next, he was now part of something vastly larger than himself, something that would reshape the future of human civilization. The only question was whether he was ready for that responsibility. The false contamination report held for exactly 36 hours before Dr. Harrison's growing suspicion overcame standard quarantine protocols. Marcus was in the facility cafeteria, grabbing a few hours of sleep in a maintenance closet he had converted into a temporary rest area, when the emergency alarms began wailing throughout the institute. He rushed back to Laboratory 7 to find HFY calmly dismantling the last of the monitoring equipment that had tracked his vital signs during 8 months of captivity. The alien skin displayed patterns of grim satisfaction as he methodically destroyed each sensor and data recorder. They have discovered the deception, HFY announced without looking up from his work. Dr. Harrison has overridden the quarantine and is en route with the security team. Marcus felt his stomach drop. How long do we have? Perhaps 10 minutes. But it does not matter. My family's response was received 3 hours ago. They are already in your solar system and will arrive within the next 6 hours. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. They're already here, in our solar system. My people do not travel slowly when family is involved, HFY explained, his skin shifting to patterns that seemed to indicate both anticipation and anxiety. The message I sent included not only my location, but also detailed scans of my physiological condition. They understood the urgency. Marcus looked around the laboratory, trying to process the magnitude of what was about to happen. 6 hours until first contact. Are we ready for this? We are as ready as possible, given the circumstances. The question is whether your people are ready to meet an advanced alien civilization under these particular conditions. The sound of approaching voices in the hallway sent both Marcus and HFY in motion. The alien quickly moved to the center of the laboratory, positioning himself where he would be immediately visible when the door opened. Marcus took a deep breath and prepared to face the consequences of his actions. Dr. Harrison entered first, followed by 2 security officers and the Institute's director, Dr. Michael Reeves. All 4 stopped short when they saw HFY standing free in the middle of the laboratory, no longer contained behind energy barriers. "How did you get out of containment?" Dr. Harrison demanded, her voice carrying a mixture of professional curiosity and personal outrage. "The security protocols should have prevented any breach. Mr. Chen released me," HFY replied calmly, nodding toward Marcus. "He determined that my prolonged imprisonment was inconsistent with basic principles of justice and compassion." Dr. Reeves turned to Marcus with an expression of disbelief. "You released a classified extraterrestrial research subject? Do you have any idea what you've done? This specimen represents the most important scientific discovery in human history." "He's not a specimen," Marcus said, finding his voice despite the overwhelming urge to apologize and beg for forgiveness. "He's a person, a father, and you've been slowly killing him while studying him like a laboratory animal. We've been conducting vital research that could benefit both our species." Dr. Harrison protested. "The potential medical and technological advances from studying his physiology are incalculable." HFY stepped forward, his imposing height making the human researchers take an unconscious step backward. "Dr. Harrison, in our 37 previous interactions, did you ever ask me about my family? About what my absence might mean to those who care for me?" Dr. Harrison looked confused by the question. "Your personal circumstances weren't relevant to the research parameters. We were focused on your biological and technological characteristics." "I see. And my declining health? Was that relevant to your research parameters?" "We were developing solutions to address your physiological needs while continuing our studies. Science takes time." HFY's skin shifted to the dark patterns Marcus had learned indicated anger. "You had solutions to my physiological needs available 4 months ago. You chose not to implement them because my deteriorating condition provided additional research opportunities." The accusation hung in the air like a physical presence. Dr. Reeves looked at Dr. Harrison with growing alarm. "Is that true? Did we have the ability to address his health problems?" "The situation was more complex than that," Dr. Harrison said defensively. "We needed to understand the full scope of his biological requirements before implementing any interventions. Premature treatment could have compromised future research opportunities. You were willing to let me die for the sake of studying how I died," HFY said with quiet intensity. "This is the first impression my people will have of human scientific ethics." Dr. Reeves paled. "Your people? My family is en route to retrieve me. They will arrive in approximately 6 hours." HFY's skin shifted to patterns that seemed almost predatory. "When they arrive, they will want to understand how I was treated during my time here, and whether humans can be trusted for future peaceful contact." The implications of that statement sent the research team into immediate panic. Dr. Harrison began speaking rapidly into her communication device, calling for emergency meetings with government officials and military commanders. Dr. Reeves started pacing the laboratory, muttering about protocols and procedures that clearly didn't exist for this situation. Marcus found himself oddly calm amid the chaos. He had known this moment was coming and had spent 2 days preparing for it with HFY's guidance. "There's something else you need to know," Marcus said, raising his voice above the confused babble of the researchers. "Humanity is being evaluated. We're not the first species they've encountered, and how we handle this situation will determine whether we're allowed to join the galactic community or remain quarantined in our own solar system." The room fell silent. Dr. Reeves stopped pacing and stared at Marcus in horror. "What do you mean, quarantined?" HFY answered, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "There are protocols for species making the transition from planetary to interstellar civilization. Your species has been observed for 3 centuries. The consensus among the galactic community has been that humans are innovative but dangerously aggressive. This contact will determine whether that assessment changes. And You're basing the determination on how we treated you? Dr. Harrison asked. On how your entire species treats those who are different, vulnerable, or dependent on your mercy. Mr. Chun provided a compelling counterexample to your treatment of me, which is why my people are arriving to establish contact rather than simply retrieving me and departing. Marcus felt the weight of representing all of humanity settling on his shoulders again. What do we need to do? How do we prove that humans can be trusted? Honesty. HFY replied immediately. Complete honesty about what occurred here, acknowledgement of the mistakes that were made, and demonstration that you have the capacity to learn from those mistakes. Dr. Harrison looked horrified. We can't simply admit to the extraterrestrial community that we imprisoned and studied their representative without consent. The political ramifications would be catastrophic. The political ramifications of attempted deception would be far worse, HFY warned. My people have technologies that make concealment impossible. They already know everything that occurred here through my own neural recordings. Your choice is whether to be honest about your actions or to be exposed as both cruel and dishonest. The next few hours passed in a blur of emergency meetings, panic phone calls to government officials, and increasingly desperate attempts by the research staff to develop a strategy for first contact that didn't involve admitting to 8 months of what amounted to kidnapping and torture. Marcus remained in Laboratory 7 with HFY, serving as the alien's primary point of contact with human authorities and helping to translate between two completely different ways of thinking about the situation. It was like mediating between parents and teenagers if the parents had nuclear weapons and the teenagers had faster-than-light travel. Your leaders are making this more complicated than necessary, HFY observed as they watched Dr. Harrison argue with someone on a secure communication channel. They seem to believe that admitting fault will make them appear weak. In human politics, admitting fault usually does make you appear weak, Marcus replied. It's not necessarily logical, but it's how our society works. But my people will view attempts at deception or justification as signs of immaturity and untrustworthiness. The very behavior your leaders think makes them appear strong will convince my family that humans are not ready for galactic contact. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling the beginnings of a headache that had nothing to do with stress and everything to do with the impossible task of bridging two completely different worldviews in the space of a few hours. What if I spoke for humanity? He asked suddenly. What if I was the one to explain what happened and take responsibility for how we move forward? HFY's skin shifted to patterns Marcus had learned indicated serious consideration. You lack the official authority to speak for your species. But I have a moral authority. I'm the one who freed you. I'm the one who represents what humans can be at our best. Marcus felt a surge of determination. And I'm the one your people might actually trust to tell them the truth. The idea was terrifying, but it also felt right. Marcus had already committed himself to this course of action when he opened HFY's containment chamber. Speaking for humanity during first contact was simply the logical next step. It could work, HFY agreed slowly. But you would need official support from your government. My people will want to speak with someone who can make binding commitments on behalf of your species. Marcus looked at the chaos surrounding them. Researchers panicking, security forces mobilizing, government officials arguing over protocols that didn't exist for a situation no one had anticipated. Then, he thought about Emma, about the world she would inherit, depending on how the next few hours unfolded. Then, we better start convincing them to give me that authority, Marcus said. The argument that followed was unlike anything in the history of human diplomacy. Marcus, a night shift janitor with no formal education beyond high school, found himself debating first contact protocols with some of the most powerful people on Earth. Dr. Reeves, Dr. Harrison, and a growing collection of government officials and military commanders all insisted that humanity needed experienced diplomats and qualified experts to handle such a crucial negotiation. Marcus countered with the simple truth that HFY's people were unlikely to trust anyone associated with a research program that had imprisoned their family member for 8 months. He was, he argued, the only human who had demonstrated that our species was capable of compassion and justice when dealing with vulnerable aliens. The breakthrough came when HFY himself intervened in the debate. I have been listening to your discussions, the alien announced, his voice carrying across the laboratory with unmistakable authority. You are debating who among you has the qualifications to speak for humanity But you are ignoring the most important qualification of all, which is, Dr. Reeves asked, trust. My people will not negotiate with individuals who represent the institutions that imprison me. They will only trust someone who demonstrated the moral courage to free me despite personal cost. HFY moved to stand beside Marcus. Mr. Chun is the only human who has earned that trust. He's a janitor, Dr. Harrison protested. He has no training in diplomacy or xenology. He has something more valuable than training, HFY replied. He has integrity, and, more importantly, he has my people's respect. The debate continued for another hour, but the outcome was inevitable. When dealing with beings capable of faster-than-light travel and advanced technology, humanity couldn't afford to alienate them with representatives they viewed as untrustworthy. Marcus would speak for Earth during first contact, with full governmental backing and authority to make binding agreements. As the sun began to set on what had already been the longest day of Marcus's life, HFY announced that his family's ship had entered Earth's atmosphere and would arrive at the Institute within the hour. Are you ready for this? HFY asked Marcus as they prepared to walk outside and greet the first official extraterrestrial visitors to Earth. Marcus thought about Emma, sleeping safely with Mrs. Rodriguez while her father prepared to reshape the future of human civilization. He thought about all the parents throughout history who had made difficult choices to build a better world for their children. No, Marcus said honestly, but I'm going to do it anyway. Together, the alien father and the human father walked out to meet the future. The alien ship materialized above the Institute with a silence that was somehow more impressive than any dramatic arrival could have been. One moment, the evening sky was empty, and the next a crystalline vessel roughly the size of a city block hung motionless 300 feet above the facility, its surface reflecting the sunset like a faceted jewel. Marcus stood in the Institute's main courtyard alongside HFY, Dr. Reeves, Dr. Harrison, and a carefully selected group of government officials and military representatives. Despite the significant human delegation, Marcus felt completely alone as he prepared to make first contact with an interstellar civilization. Are you certain your people understand that I'm authorized to speak for humanity? Marcus asked HFY quietly. They understand that you are the human most likely to speak honestly about what has occurred here, which makes you the most appropriate representative regardless of your official credentials, HFY replied. His skin had been cycling through complex patterns of anticipation and anxiety since the ship appeared. My offspring are aboard that vessel, Marcus Chun. They will see me for the first time in 8 of your months, and they will judge humanity based largely on what you tell them. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on Marcus like a physical force. He thought about Emma, about how he would feel if she had been taken from him for 8 months by alien scientists who studied her while she slowly died. The parallel made his stomach clench with sympathetic anger. A beam of soft light descended from the ship, and 3 figures materialized within it. Marcus's first impression was of a family reunion interrupted by the most important diplomatic contact in human history. 2 of the figures were clearly younger versions of HFY, smaller, with the same elongated limbs and shimmering skin, but displaying color patterns that seemed brighter and more dynamic than their parents. The third figure was older, with skin that held traces of silver and patterns that suggested great age and authority. HFY moved forward immediately, his skin brightening to brilliant golds and whites that Marcus had never seen before. The 2 younger aliens rushed to him, and for a moment the courtyard witnessed something completely universal, a parent reuniting with children who had feared they would never see their father again. Marcus found himself smiling despite the tension of the situation. Whatever else happened during this contact, HFY was home with his family. The older alien approached the human delegation with measured steps, studying each person with dark eyes that seemed to catalog and evaluate everything they saw. When those eyes settled on Marcus, he felt like he was being examined by someone who could see directly into his soul. I am Veltar, birth parent of HFY and speaker for our family cluster, the elder alien said in English that was even more precise than HFY's. You are Marcus Chun, the human who freed my offspring from captivity. Yes, sir. I mean, yes. Marcus struggled to find the right tone for addressing someone who was simultaneously an alien, a grandfather, and humanity's first official extraterrestrial contact. I'm honored to meet you. The honor is mine. You have returned my family's joy to us. Veltar's skin displayed patterns of what Marcus hoped was appreciation. But we must discuss the circumstances that made your intervention necessary. Dr. Reeves stepped forward, clearly intending to take charge of the diplomatic proceedings, but Veltar raised a hand that somehow conveyed absolute authority despite being completely alien. I will speak only with Marcus Chun, the elder alien announced. He has demonstrated understanding of our values in a way that your other representatives have not. The dismissal of the entire government delegation was both diplomatically catastrophic and completely understandable. Marcus found himself caught between two impossible positions: representing humanity without the authority to make binding commitments, or deferring to officials who had already lost any credibility with the aliens. With respect, Marcus said carefully, I want to speak honestly with you about what happened, but these other people represent the governments and institutions that will need to implement any agreements we might reach. Veltar studied the human delegation for a long moment. Very well, they may observe and provide information as needed. But you, Marcus Chun, will speak for your species. Your words will be taken as the official position of humanity. Marcus felt Dr. Reeves tense beside him, but couldn't spare the attention to worry about human political complications. He was now officially Earth's ambassador to the stars, whether anyone had planned it that way or not. Understand, Marcus said. What do you want to know? Everything. From the moment my offspring was captured until the moment you chose to free him. For the next 3 hours, Marcus recounted 8 months of HFY's imprisonment with brutal honesty. He described the capture, the research protocols, the slow deterioration of HFY's health, and the administration's knowledge of his condition. He explained the research staff's focus on scientific advancement over basic humanitarian concerns, and the institutional mindset that viewed HFY as a specimen rather than a person. Throughout his account, the two younger aliens, HFY's children, moved closer to their parent, their skin displaying patterns of distress and anger as they learned what their father had endured. Veltar's skin remained largely neutral, but Marcus could see subtle color shifts that suggested carefully controlled emotion. Dr. Harrison tried to interject several times to provide context or justification for the research program, but each time Veltar silenced her with a look that could have frozen plasma. When Marcus finished his account, the courtyard fell silent except for the distant hum of the alien ship's engines. You have been honest about your species' failures, Veltar said finally. Now explain why we should not simply retrieve our family member and warn all other species to avoid contact with humans. Marcus had spent 2 days preparing for this question, but actually facing it was still terrifying. The future of humanity's place in the galaxy hung on his answer. Because what happened to HFY doesn't represent what humans are capable of at our best, Marcus said. It represents what we're capable of when we act from fear and treat others as objects instead of people. But the same species that imprisoned your son also produced people willing to risk everything to free him. You were the only human to act with compassion during 8 months of observation, Veltar pointed out. This suggests your species' capacity for empathy is extremely limited. No, it suggests that most humans never knew what was happening. The research program was classified, hidden from public view. If the average person on Earth knew that we had captured a father and separated him from his children while studying him like a laboratory animal, there would have been outrage. Marcus gestured toward the institute building behind them. The people who work here, most of them, they're good people who genuinely want to advance human knowledge and make life better for everyone. But they got caught up in institutional thinking that lost sight of basic moral principles. They forgot that being more technologically advanced doesn't make someone less deserving of basic dignity and rights. Veltar's skin shifted to patterns Marcus couldn't interpret. You speak of institutional thinking as if it were separate from individual choice. But institutions are composed of individuals making decisions. You're right. Everyone involved made individual choices that led to HFY's imprisonment and suffering. But humans are capable of learning from mistakes and changing how we act. Marcus took a deep breath. I can't promise that all humans will make better choices in the future. But I can promise that many of us will, especially if we understand the consequences of our actions. And how do you propose to ensure this understanding? Marcus looked at the assembled government officials, then back at Veltar. Full disclosure. Complete transparency about what happened here, why it was wrong, and how we plan to prevent similar situations in the future. No cover-ups, no classified programs, no treating first contact as a military or scientific opportunity to be exploited. Dr. Reeves made a sound of protest, but Marcus continued before he could be interrupted. Humans need to know that we're part of a larger galactic community with established protocols for peaceful contact. We need to understand that our actions are being evaluated and that our future among the stars depends on proving we can treat other species with the same respect we demand for ourselves. One of HFY's children stepped forward and spoke in their musical language. HFY responded, and they had a brief conversation before Veltar addressed Marcus again. My grandchild asks whether you have offspring of your own. Marcus smiled involuntarily. A daughter, Emma. She's 11 years old. And what do you tell her about right and wrong? That how we treat people who can't protect themselves shows who we really are. That being strong or smart or having advantages doesn't give us the right to hurt others. And that sometimes doing the right thing is scary and difficult, but it's still the only choice that lets you look at yourself in the mirror afterward. Veltar's skin shifted to patterns that might have been approval. These are wisdom teachings that translate across species. Perhaps there is hope for your people after all. There is, Marcus said with conviction he truly felt. Humans make mistakes, sometimes terrible ones. But we also have the capacity to recognize those mistakes, feel genuine remorse, and commit to doing better. What happened to HFY was wrong, and I can't undo it. But I can help ensure it never happens again. The elder alien was quiet for several minutes, apparently communicating with his grandchildren in their color-based language. Finally, he turned back to Marcus. We will establish a preliminary contact protocol with your species, Veltar announced. But it will be conditional and limited. You will have one of your years to demonstrate meaningful change in how you approach contact with other species. During this time, a small embassy will be established at this location to monitor your progress and provide guidance on galactic community standards. Marcus felt a surge of relief and gratitude that was immediately tempered by the magnitude of what Veltar was proposing. A year to change how humanity thinks about first contact and alien relations. A year to prove that the compassion you demonstrate